We're calling to order this hearing or roundtable. This is a public roundtable of the Committee of the Whole of the Council of the District of Columbia. I'm Phil Mendelson, Chairman of the Committee of the Whole and Chair of the Council of the District of Columbia. Today is Wednesday, October 27th, 2021. The time is 3:09 in the afternoon, and this hearing is being conducted virtually via the Zoom video conference broadcast platform. It's also available live on the Chairman's website, which is www.chairmanmendelson.com/live. The hearing is being recorded, and it also will be available on the council's website, which is www.dccouncil.us. The subject of today's hearing is multiple appointments. I believe it's something like 6 different appointments under consideration by the Committee of the Whole and eventually the council. The first is PR 24-413, the District of Columbia Uniform Law Commission Heidi Sue Reappointment Resolution 2021. I want to say the hearing in terms of witnesses will be in a slightly different order. The stated purpose of this resolution is to reappoint Ms. Heidi Sue to the District of Columbia Uniform Law Commission for a term to end on July 1st, 2024. The second resolution is PR 24-428, which is entitled the District of Columbia Housing Authority Board of Commissioners Raymond A. Skinner Appointment Resolution 2021. The purpose of this resolution is to appoint Mr. Raymond A. Skinner to the District of Columbia Housing Authority Board of Commissioners for a term to end December 31st, 2024. The next 3 resolutions are PR 24-414, Commission on Health Equity, Delia Halcyon Appointment Resolution 2021, PR 24-427, Commission on Health Equity, Alicia Wilson Reappointment Resolution of 2021, and PR 24-430, Commission on Health Equity, Christopher King Reappointment Resolution of 2021. And the stated purpose of these resolutions are, taking everything out of order, so I have to slow down here, to appoint Dr. Delia Halcyon to the Commission on Health Equity as introduced as a non-voting community advisory member, but I think we're going to change that to a voting member on the Commission on Health Equity. The PR 24-427 is to reappoint Ms. Alicia Wilson to the Commission on Health Equity as a voting member for a term to end on July 7th, 2023. And the purpose of PR 24-430 is to reappoint Dr. Christopher King to the Commission on Health Equity as a voting member for a term to end on July 7th, 2024. And then the last resolution is PR 24-429, Citizen Review Panel, Dr. Wanda Thompson, Appointment Resolution of 2021. The purpose of which is to appoint Dr. Wanda Thompson to be on the Citizen Review Panel for the Prevention of Child Abuse and Neglect for a term of 3 years. The record in this matter for all of these resolutions will close at 5 p.m. on November 10th, 2021. And that will enable us to proceed at the next Committee of the Whole meeting with markup on the resolutions, assuming that there are no problems that are revealed at this hearing. I hope there aren't. I'm going to go first to Raymond Skinner, but I see a couple of colleagues here briefly for opening statements. And I'm not sure who got here first. I'm going to try Councilmember Bonds.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chairman. And good afternoon to everyone. Thank you so much for holding this hearing today. I know that we have considerable work that we're trying to get through this calendar year. So this is an important opportunity to have a first look at some of the candidates for these important boards and commissions. As you know, the council added 2 new positions to the DC Housing Authority Board of Commissioners in the Budget Support Act this year, as championed by my office for a very specific reason. We felt as a body that there was a need for additional expertise on the board given the major decisions the authority is taking to preserve and produce housing using a development-based approach. And so with that in mind, we think about Berry Farm, Park Morton, Northwest One, Greenleaf, and the other properties. These are all examples of new development-based approach that the authority is using. And as we all know, HUD has made it very clear that if you want new and the preserving of existing public housing, local dollars must be included in the scenario. In other words, HUD is not assuming full responsibility into the future. It is on the various districts across the country to preserve their public housing in particular. We need on this board not only to guide the decisions of the body, but also to keep the public, the residents of public housing, the council informed on what decisions that are being made and taken at any given time. I'm delighted that you are considering Mr. Raymond Skinner background. Because of his expertise, I believe he's well suited for this important role. He has a vast housing background, serving most prominently as the former Secretary of Housing and Community Development for the state of Maryland. Indeed, during his tenure, working on behalf of the entire state, he oversaw public housing for the entire state of Maryland. And we all know that Maryland has some of the more progressive and housing in the nation. And so I'd like to think that he had made a contribution to that attribute that we attribute to that state, our neighbor. His professional career has included numerous accolades and acknowledgements, as he has been the recipient of the University of Pennsylvania Lifetime Achievement Award and numerous others. I hope I haven't stole your thunder, Mr. Chairman, because I'm sure that you are going to speak to us about Mr. Skinner's background, but I was just overjoyed at seeing his resume and knowing a little bit about his background and experience. And so I'm very happy to be here today, especially to hear what he has to say about this likely appointment. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember Bonds. Councilmember Silverman?
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon to my colleagues and to our nominees. Mr. Chairman, I am here to speak about the DC Housing Authority and Mr. Skinner's nomination. I just want to say, Mr. Chairman, that the Housing Authority, though technically an independent agency from district government, is so vitally important to us. And for residents who don't know what the Housing Authority does, it provides, I would say, dignified, or should provide dignified, safe housing for people who make very low incomes in our city, but are so critical. People who work at CVS, people who work in our childcare centers, who are absolutely critical, not only to our economy, but to our individual lives. And that's DCHA's mission, which is different than the mission of DMPED or our housing agency, DHCD. Yet I would argue in my time on the council, DCHA has struggled to meet that mission of maintaining and building dignified, safe housing for our extremely low income residents. And the biggest way the council can keep DCHA on task is making sure that the Board of Commissioners, which governs the agency, is composed of subject matter experts, DCHA residents, and community leaders truly committed to DCHA's mission. I'm not going to hide the ball here. DCHA's Board of Commissioners has been in the news due to scandal that led to the resignation of the board chair. And now I see another member is in the news regarding, it looks like, another investigation. Certainly, we want to appoint and approve members who are ethical. That's got to be the floor, it seems. But we also need people who are subject matter experts in extreme building and maintaining extremely low income housing in high cost cities. I think given the scandal, we also need someone who is willing to ask hard questions and sound alarms. And I have to say, Mr. Chairman, I might put this, certainly want to make sure we have housing finance experts on the board, and Mr. Skinner certainly has that expertise. But I think we also need people who are willing to, as I said, ask hard questions and sound alarms, because there are a lot of alarms going off at DCHA right now. And it wasn't, and it was largely due to the press digging in to what is going on there. Now, certainly, Mr. Skinner is immensely qualified as a multifamily housing expert and has a lot of government expertise from a state that I spent my youth in. So there's absolutely no question about his subject matter expertise. I am going to be asking Mr. Skinner questions today, and I hope to talk with him one-on-one as well about public housing redevelopment. And what I think is just an absolutely critical issue for our city, which is how we build that extremely low income housing in a high cost market like ours, and how we do, let's say, a mixed income developments that don't put the market rate or 80% AMI housing first, which I think has happened a lot with DCHA. So I do look forward to talking with you, Mr. Skinner, during the hearing as well as outside the hearing. And thank you very much for agreeing to be a nominee. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the time to make an opening statement.
Thank you, Councilmember Silverman. Councilmember Vince Gray, do you have an opening statement?
I'm very excited to speak in support of Delia Houseal's appointment to the Commission on Health Equity. Her resume cites so many opportunities that she's had to be able to publish on the issues that are important to her and to us as well. I'm very excited that she is interested in, willing to be appointed to the Commission on Health Equity. The Health Equity Commission provides comprehensive recommendations to the Department of Health, to the Council, and the Mayor to examine and address health equities across the District of Columbia. The Commission also examines differing opportunities for healthcare access by demographic subpopulations and geographic areas as well. Eliminating barriers to health equity has been the primary focus of the Committee on Health since I returned to chair this committee. Although the district boasts the second best insurance rate in the nation at 97%, the residents on the east end of the District of Columbia do not have the ability to conveniently use their insurance because of a lack of healthcare facilities in our respective neighborhoods. Meanwhile, wards 7 and 8 trail behind other wards at the city with significant health outcome disparities with areas such as diabetes, heart disease, obesity, cancer, asthma, and overall life expectancy. To bring health equity to the east end of the District of Columbia, we are building a comprehensive healthcare system. Soon we will have a new MBI urgent care center opening in Ward 7, and Whitman Walker is opening at its new location at the St. Elizabeth's campus in Ward 8. In late 2021 or early 2022, a GW Health Urgent Care Center will open in Ward 8. And then a second urgent care center will open in Ward 7 around the end of 2022. Then in the fall of 2024, a new community hospital will open at the St. Elizabeth's campus. The hospital will bring obstetrical care and trauma care services back to the district's east end. The hospital will open with 136 licensed beds with a commitment that the council and the executive made to build physical shell space to allow the hospital capacity to grow to 196 beds. Also, the hospital will feature an attached ambulatory care center as well. And for those of us who have seen the renderings, we're extremely excited about what's forthcoming. I've actually known Delia Houseel for some time, probably several decades. I know her commitment to health equity. She is an ideal candidate to be appointed to this commission during this transformative time. She is a health expert and has fought for expanding public health access throughout her career, working for both the district and federal governments, and in her role as an advisory neighborhood commissioner, where she served as a part of ANC 7E OC. I look forward to Ms. Houseel's, Dr. Houseel's testimony today, and I look forward to voting for her confirmation, Mr. Chairman. So thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak on her behalf. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. That's going to conclude all of the opening statements. So we're going to take the appointments in this order. The DC Housing Authority, that's Mr. Skinner, and then the Uniform Law Commission, that's Ms. Sue, and then the Commission on Health Equity, that's Dr. Houseel, Alicia Wilson, and Dr. King. And then we'll conclude with the Citizen Review Panel, which is Dr. Thompson. Mr. Skinner, welcome. And if you would give a statement, I'll have a few questions. We'll see if other members have questions for you. Thank you for your willingness to serve and for being here.
Okay, good afternoon, Chairman Mendelson and members of the council. I'm really pleased to be here this afternoon and appear before you as a nominee for appointment to the Board of Commissioners of the DC Housing Authority. I truly believe my extensive career in public service in the housing community development field make me a prime candidate for this position. And I genuinely am excited to have the opportunity to once again serve the residents of the District of Columbia, and particularly to support the Housing Authority in carrying out its mission of serving some of the city's most vulnerable residents, those with extremely low incomes. I was previously employed by the district government for over 10 years, back in beginning in the late 70s and 1980s. Started out as a planner in what was then called the Municipal Planning Office, and ended my tenure in the district as executive director of what was then called the Office of Business and Economic Development. In 1990, I became director of housing and community development, as well as director of the Housing Authority in neighboring Prince George's County. Later, I was honored to be appointed secretary of the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development, position I held for almost 15 years under two different governors. So in these positions, I was really deeply immersed in all aspects of local, state, and federal housing and community development programs. And I'm sure you're familiar with many of those, like the Community Development Block Grant Program, Home Investment Partnership, Housing Choice Vouchers, Low-Income Housing Tax Credits, and of course, there are many others. I also got to work with and develop relationships with many regulatory entities, including HUD, FHA, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and others. But importantly, I gained experience in managing large budgets, typically $300 to $400 million at state DHCD, and managing large staff. Also made it a practice to engage with national professional organizations, which gave me a broader perspective on programs and practices and an opportunity to network with colleagues around the country. I currently serve on the board of Reinvestment Fund, which is a nonprofit community development financial institution in Philadelphia, but we also focused on working in the district. In fact, just last week, we approved an allocation of new market tax credits for the DC Central Kitchen to support its development of its new headquarters building at Buzzard Point. So I believe that all of those experiences make me really an ideal candidate for the Housing Authority Board. And I see the role of the board as providing strategic and fiduciary oversight of the authority's practices, operations, and programs. And this oversight should include a review of activities with respect to fulfilling the strategic goals of the organization, and evaluation of both reputational and financial risks to the agency. I am certainly aware that the Housing Authority faces huge challenges right now, and I am prepared to tackle these challenges working in collaboration with fellow board members and with the new staff leadership. But dealing with these issues will not be easy. It will require engagement with the district government, this council, public housing residents, and a broad array of community stakeholders. But my approach has always been to focus on practical, pragmatic solutions where my objective is to get things done. And I bring to this engagement my underlying values of hard work, integrity, transparency, and accountability. Let me close by saying that I am really delighted to once again be living in the District of Columbia. I'm truly a city guy. I was born and raised in Philadelphia. I lived for a couple of years in Baltimore and actually lived 20 years in DC before we moved to suburban Maryland. So it really feels good to be back in the city, in Ward 5, in what my wife and I refer to as our forever home. And I look forward to be able to contribute in any way I can to the district's continued growth and development. So I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you this afternoon, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Skinner. And again, thank you for your willingness to serve. I do have a few questions for you. We had submitted to you some pre-hearing questions and you returned them. Thank you for that. I always ask these 3 questions at hearings, even though they were addressed in your pre-hearing answers. First, do you have a sense of how much time it will require to serve on the board, Housing Authority Board, and do you have the time to give?
A short answer is it's going to take a lot of time, particularly now, again, with some of the issues that I'm sure we may be talking about. But I'm prepared to serve. I am essentially retired. I have been doing a little bit of consulting work, but essentially I'm retired and I'm willing to put in whatever time is necessary, including attending community meetings. I'm sure there'll be a lot of those in the evening. And I've done that throughout my career and certainly would be willing to do it now.
The second question is, are you current in your taxes and obligations to the district government and the federal government?
Yes, I am.
And the third question is, do you know of any possible conflicts of interest?
No, I'm not aware of any.
And if any were to come up, what would you do?
I would disclose.
And recuse yourself if.
And yeah, depending on what it is.
Does your service on the reinvestment fund, does that implicate any projects to come before the Housing Authority?
Not to my knowledge so far. I don't believe we have had any projects that were where we were working with the Housing Authority. Again, if some were to come up, I would disclose it and recuse myself if necessary.
Thank you. I may have some more questions, but I'm going to turn to colleagues. Councilmember Bonds, will be a 5-minute clock.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I do have just a very few. And again, thank you, Mr. Skinner, for your willingness to take on this task. And as you said it well, whatever time it takes to make things work well. That's your goal, and I appreciate that so much. Can you please talk a little bit about what you think the goals and objectives of our public housing agency should be, based on what you have learned from other urban and neighboring jurisdictions?
Well, I think the overall mission for the housing authority and any housing authority, because remember, there are literally thousands of housing authorities throughout the country. And the role of housing authorities is to really provide safe quality housing for the lowest income residents in a given jurisdiction, what we refer to in the industry as extremely low income, those with incomes 30% of the median income or less. And housing authorities have done that since the inception, I guess, under the Housing Act of 1937. So that role continues. And it's expanded in different ways now with, for example, housing choice vouchers. Instead of having in addition to having the hard physical units, housing authorities have vouchers that where they can provide to residents who can go find housing on the open market. And now, of course, given the issues with trying to deal with the capital needs among housing authorities, is looking at becoming more entrepreneurial, in the sense developers who will use different financing mechanisms to maintain not only public housing, but get involved in what we refer to as mixed income communities.
If you could just move a little deeper into that and talk about some of the strategies that have worked best for you in terms of public housing and community development in the past. I know you have many examples, but give us one or two, please.
So, I mean, I think it really comes down to finding the capital needed to structure programs and projects. So I will say that one of the projects that I'm most proud of, or more than one project, there were several projects that we worked on in Baltimore City with the Baltimore Housing Authority under what you may remember as the Hope 6 program. The Hope 6 was a program from HUD that provided some capital resources to housing authorities to essentially redevelop public housing, but also looking at a larger strategy of redeveloping the neighborhood around the physical public housing units. And in Baltimore, we helped finance through state DHCD, which serves as the housing finance agency for the state of Maryland. We financed, I believe, 4 or 5 Hope 6 projects where the state provided the city of Baltimore, the Baltimore Housing Authority, with approximately $65 million over the course of several years to demolish some of the high-rise public housing in Baltimore and rebuild in a community with townhouses and low-density development.
Thank you for that. Can you, with my few seconds remaining, can you just talk quickly about where you are on these issues that tend to crop up, where board and maybe the authority personnel may have issues, differences? Maybe there's not the understanding in community, and how do you see that? I mean, as it relates to integrity, transparency. I mean, I'm trying to wrap a lot in one point.
Well, again, as I mentioned in my opening statement, I mean, part of the responsibility of the board is to oversee the operations and policies of the agency, of the housing authority. And, while we are not staff, of course, we have to work closely with the staff to help them carry out their programs and policies. But I personally, again, as I mentioned, will do that with the utmost integrity. I believe in transparency, making things visible to the community at large, and holding people accountable. So that's kind of how I would view that.
All right, thank you. I'm over. Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Skinner.
Thank you, Councilmember Bonds. Councilmember Silverman?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon to you, Mr. Skinner. Thank you for agreeing to be nominated for this position. You certainly have a lot of housing finance experience as well as political experience. And as someone who grew up in Baltimore, I have to admit, I think you were talking about Murphy Homes, if I'm not mistaken, in that area. So
Yes, that was one of the Hope 6 deals.
exactly. So I always have a familiarity with someone who's done a lot of work in Baltimore. I want to probe further, though, what Councilmember Bonds, who chairs our housing committee, was asking you about. So you mentioned in your opening statement that part of your responsibility on the board was fiduciary oversight, as well as guarding against reputational and financial risk. So the Housing Authority has been in the news. There are certainly reputational risks right now, as well as financial risks. I'd like you to talk a little bit more about those and what you see your role as being to guard against that risk as a commissioner.
So I would say as commissioner, we need to look at very carefully at all the projects that come before us, because the commission has to approve all the deals that are brought to us by the staff, and make sure that in terms of what is being proposed, that it makes financial sense, first of all, that the developers that we're going to contract with have the experience and the financial wherewithal to be able to carry out the program. So I see now where we have certain projects that are kind of stuck. They aren't moving forward. And I think in some cases that may be because they weren't really vetted enough up front. So again, I think in our oversight role as part of the board, we need to try to make sure that those projects that come to us really have been looked at very carefully, that we've looked at not only financial risks, but making sure that whatever we are doing is completely compatible with our overall mission, again, which is servicing the lowest income families in the city.
I want to pursue a little bit more your answer in that some of the commissioners on the Housing Authority have said that they haven't been given the details to properly vet these deals. And that has been echoed for the past few years, that commissioners have not been given financial details, have not been given briefings, and were put in the position of having to vote on projects that they didn't feel they had a true understanding of. And I'll even go more, say more that didn't fulfill the mission of the Housing Authority. As you talked about, the authority has a lot of mixed income deals, and some of the commissioners said they didn't have the financial information and felt like the deals were not to the benefit of those who need to be housed by the Housing Authority and the Housing Authority's mission of extremely low income housing, but really benefited developers who wanted to build, let's say, higher levels of affordable housing and market rate housing. So how would you deal with that, given that that has been said by some of the commissioners who you're joining? What will you do to make sure you get the proper information you need to vet these deals?
Well, I think, first of all, we as commissioners have to insist on getting the information. And part of that may entail asking the right questions. And I believe, with my background and knowledge of housing finance, that I'll be asking hard questions. And if I'm not given answers that are satisfactory, then I think we shouldn't move those projects forward. I mean, at some point, we have to feel comfortable that what we're doing, again, fulfills a mission, but also is financially responsible.
And how will you hold people accountable?
Well, again, I think it's making sure that what they say in terms of what we're trying to do, that there are measurable outcomes. And we have to make sure that when we put these deals together, we know what the expectations are and what we want to end up with in the end, and make sure that if those expectations are not met, then people are held accountable.
Thank you, Mr. Skinner. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm out of time.
Thank you. Councilmember Gray, do you have any questions? I do not have any further questions for you, Mr. Skinner. Thank you again for your willingness to serve. If the committee has any questions, we'll let you know. We may not. As I indicated at the beginning, the record will close on November 10th. If there's anything additional you want to submit, and I'm not asking that you have to. Thank you again. So you're
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And I'm going to turn to the next, Heidi Sue, who's been nominated for reappointment to the Uniform Law Commission. Good afternoon. Do you have a statement?
I do. Should I proceed?
Yes, please.
Good afternoon, Chairman Mendelson, members of the committee and staff. My name is Heidi Sue, and I'm here today to testify on PR 24-413 and my proposed reappointment to serve as Commissioner for the District of Columbia to the Uniform Law Commission. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. My testimony this afternoon will focus on my work on the Commission over the past 2.5 years and my continued interest in serving in this capacity for another term. The Uniform Law Commission was established in 1892, with the District of Columbia serving as a member of the ULC for over 115 years, having joined in 1905. It is a state-supported organization that provides states with nonpartisan, well-conceived, and well-drafted legislation that brings clarity and stability to critical areas of state statutory law. They do so through a participatory process where commissioners participate in drafting specific acts. They discuss, consider, and amend drafts of other commissioners. They decide whether to recommend an act as a uniform or a model act, and they work toward enactment of ULC acts in their home jurisdictions. A fundamental requirement for commissioners is participating in the ULC's annual meeting each summer, where draft acts are considered before the full commission of over 380 commissioners representing every state, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, and the US Virgin Islands. Commissioners have gathered every year since 1892 for this annual meeting, the one exception being 1945, when no annual meeting was held because of wartime travel restrictions. I've participated in all 3 annual meetings since my appointment, 2 of which still proceeded but were conducted with a virtual option because of the COVID-19 pandemic. In addition, 2.5 years ago, when I testified before you about my appointment to the ULC, I'd stated further goals that I'd hoped to pursue during my term. They were to seek opportunities to join commission committees, collaborate with other DC commissioners in order to promote council adoption of uniform laws, and develop connections with commissioners in our region in the hopes that there would be opportunities for regional collaborations. I believe I've made noticeable progress towards these goals in the short time since. In spring 2020, I was appointed by the ULC leadership to serve as a member of the study committee on mitigation of public health emergency business disruptions, and was since named vice chair of the new drafting committee on public health emergency authorities. I've also been appointed as a member of the Legislative Council, a standing committee of the ULC that is responsible for supervising the securing of adoptions of uniform and model acts. On that committee, my area of purview will include the District of Columbia, as well as Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia. If appointed by the council to serve a second term as Uniform Law Commissioner, I will want to continue deepening my engagement with the ULC and apply my skills to both the thoughtful development of uniform laws, as well as expanding adoption of these laws across the country, but in particular within the district and our region, in order to advance the ULC's mission of bringing clarity and stability to our laws. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my testimony today. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Can we have a copy of your statement?
Yes, I think I emailed one yesterday, but I can send another copy.
If you would, because I didn't get it. There are standard questions I ask at every hearing, appointment hearing. So you've served, so you have a sense of the time required. Do you have the time to serve when reappointed?
I do.
And are there ever conflicts of interest to come up in the work before the ULC?
Yes, there have been conflicts that have come up.
Have you had any conflicts?
I have a conflict right now, just out of an abundance of caution. I recused myself from serving as a ULC commissioner on the college athlete name, image, likeness bill.
Okay, because of your employment with Georgetown.
Correct. I also the Athlete Agents Act, which has also been introduced.
So that's how you would handle a conflict if it comes up, is you would identify it and recuse yourself.
I would identify it to the Uniform Law Commission and my fellow commissioners, and then recuse myself from participating as a ULC commissioner.
And then the third question is, are you current on taxes and obligations to the district and federal governments?
Yes.
You mentioned in your statement that the ULC does uniform laws, but you also said model laws too. I was unaware. How often does ULC do model statutes?
They actually do model statutes pretty frequently. So the committee that I'm serving on right now that has to do with public health emergencies, that's going to be a model act as opposed to a uniform act.
You want to say for the millions of people who are watching this hearing, what the difference is between a model and a uniform?
Well, the Model Act is a little bit more of a choice for each jurisdiction to adopt it as a whole or in pieces, where the Uniform Act, the concept is for that uniformity to apply across all jurisdictions in its state.
So for example, the Uniform Corporations Act has been adopted by most, if not all, the states. So it's almost as if it's a national law.
Exactly. And that's the space that the Uniform Law Commission fills, is where it's not at the federal level, but there is a benefit to having that type of uniformity across jurisdictions.
Give me just a moment. I was just handed a copy of your statement, so you don't have to worry about that. I do not have any other questions for you. Thank you for your service and thank you for your willingness to serve. Let me see if Councilmember Gray has any questions. Councilmember Gray?
I do not, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right. So you're excused. Again, thank you. And I'm going to move to the next several nominees for the Commission on Health Equity. Thank you, Ms. Sue. So we're now going to hear testimony from Dr. Delia Halsey, Alicia Wilson, and Dr. Christopher King. See, one person's been admitted. I'm told that we're having some technical issues with getting Alicia Wilson promoted, as they say, from, I was a little confused about this, whatever the Zoom watching room is to the Zoom participatory room, and I see her now. And I think I was told that Dr. King may be a little late. So we'll proceed with Why don't we proceed with Dr. Halsey and then to Ms. Wilson. Good afternoon.
Afternoon, and thank you, Chairman Mendelson, members of the committee and staff. My name is Dr. Delia Houseel, and I am currently a resident of the Marshall Heights neighborhood in Ward 7. I am pleased to testify before you today to respectfully request the council's support for my confirmation as a member of the Health Equity Commission of the District of Columbia. I am also extremely honored and humbled that Councilmember Gray has nominated me for appointment to this very important commission. And so I'd like to take a moment to share a bit about my background, professional experience, and academic training. And as I speak, I hope that my background demonstrates that I possess the required characteristics and values required to serve on the Health Equity Commission. My passion and interest in health equities began as a teen as I watched both of my now deceased parents, Mr. Freddie and Dorothy Houseel, navigate a healthcare system in South Carolina that was plagued with interpersonal, institutional, and systemic biases, what we now call structural inequities. It was also during this time that I became an informal healthcare navigator and made the decision to dedicate my life to improving health outcomes for all people, regardless of their race, ethnicity, geographic location, or socioeconomic status. This passion also led me to the District of Columbia in 1997 to attend Howard University. It was at Howard University that I was able to gain a better understanding of how institutional and systemic racism influence health outcomes. It was also during this time that I was able to sharpen and refine my advocacy skills. Shortly after graduating from Howard University with a Bachelor's of Science, I began working at Wilkinson Elementary School in Ward 8 as an elementary school teacher. As a teacher in one of the most disadvantaged neighborhoods in the district, I saw firsthand how the unfair distribution of resources, services, and policies resulted in poor individual, family, and community outcomes. While teaching at Wilkinson, I began pursuing a Master of Public Health degree from the George Washington University with a particular focus on disease prevention and health promotion. While it was a tough decision, I left Wilkinson Elementary School to begin my career in the field of public health. One of my first professional experiences was studying health disparities through an internship at the DC Department of Health, where I was responsible for conducting analyses to identify differences in maternal and child health outcomes. I also worked part-time as a healthcare navigator, helping residents east of the river navigate healthcare services through an innovative Medicaid waiver that was designed to tackle disparities in care and improve access to healthcare services. Shortly thereafter, I transitioned to a full-time employment at the DC Department of Health, working as a public health analyst in the Diabetes Prevention and Control Program. While working at the DC Department of Health, I completed my Master's of Public Health program by completing qualitative research on how to reduce diabetes-related disparities among African-American males in the district. At the time, the research was groundbreaking and resulted in several national presentations. During my tenure at DC Department of Health, I also conducted the first evaluation of the Chronic Disease Self-Management Program and co-authored the district's first comprehensive strategic plan for how the city could address disparities in cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and kidney disease outcomes. After a number of achievements, I transitioned to the federal space where I worked to tackle disparities by ensuring minority representation in the research and medical sciences. It was also during this time that I completed my PhD in public health from Walden University with a concentration in community and education. My dissertation focused on understanding the relationship between food insecurities and diabetes outcomes. While both my professional and academic work was rewarding and led to a number of different achievements, awards, and publications, I realized that institutional and systemic policy changes were necessary to address the social determinants of health and reduce disparities and inequities in health outcomes. Currently, I also serve as an advisory neighborhood commissioner for Single Member District 7006, where I advocate on behalf of 2,000 Marshall Heights residents. I believe that my background and experiences uniquely position me to serve on the Health Equity Commission, and that I would be able to bring a fresh perspective to examining and addressing health inequities across the district in a way that is responsive to the unique and diverse social, cultural, and economic needs of district residents. Mr. Chairman, again, thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today. I am extremely excited about the opportunity or the potential opportunity to serve the residents of the District of Columbia and look forward to answering any questions that you or others may have at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Halsey. We're going to hear from Alicia Wilson, and then I'll have a few questions. Ms. Wilson?
Thank you. I'll keep my remarks brief. My name is Alicia Wilson. I have had the honor of being part of the DC Health Equity Commission since its founding. When I was previously appointed, I was the executive director of La Clínica del Pueblo, and now I am running a consulting business with a focus on social justice, health equity, immigrant rights, and racial equity. And I really enjoy continuing to work with and for DC-based nonprofits and community members. My time on the commission has been a great learning experience. Feel like the work was a little slow to get off the ground, but I'm really proud of the work of the Health Equity Office in particular. The baseline report that they were produced on key drivers of inequity, I feel was really groundbreaking in the city and provides extraordinary information for DC policymakers and the executive branch to use in its work going forward. I think COVID and the COVID response has been a key opportunity for us to look at health equity from a number of different key drivers. And I think the commission has, to a certain extent, played a role of asking really hard questions and continuing to drive the COVID response to maintain equity as its core focus. I'm really excited about the work to come. I'm excited to hear that the Health Equity Office will begin working more collaboratively with the new Office of Racial Equity, and that the commission can really step into its role of developing recommendations for the council, as well as recommendations for the DC Health. And because health equity, it crosses way beyond the boundaries of a health department, making recommendations more broadly that would affect those key drivers of inequities in health. I have lots of thoughts about where we can go from here, but I'll end my remarks there and be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you for the opportunity to be reappointed.
Thank you. My first question to both of you is, I don't have a copy of your statements. Would you be sure to send them?
Sure.
And let me see, what's my second question? Ms. Wilson, since you've been on the commission, and this is a reappointment, you can speak to this. Do the members of the commission work well together?
Yes, I feel like the work of the commission has not been fully fleshed out yet. We've done a lot of formative getting to know what our job is work, and then been stymied a little bit by COVID. But I think we tend to collaborate well. We listen to each other well. And in general, it's extremely collegial. Yes.
And that's why you're hopeful that moving forward, that there's going to be a lot of work that gets done. That's
Yes.
what we're saying in your statement. But
Exactly.
one issue that's important to me, and I can't really ask it of new appointees like Dr. Hausil, is whether folks are working well together. And
Yeah.
yes.
Yes, I believe that they are. I think there continues to be some need to define our role and our scope. And I think there's been a good bit of turnover within the commission. So there's, with Dr. Hausil joining and Dr. King being reappointed, I think there's some great opportunity to sort of firm up our work together and really get some work done.
How much time would you say you spend on the commission?
Not very much. It has been a lighter lift than I expected it to be. We have quarterly meetings, and then there's some correspondence in between those meetings. It has not been a really heavy lift.
Do you think the commission will be meeting more often, or will continue quarterly and just maybe a little bit more work in between?
I believe there is like a conference that's being planned, which would mean more work for us to be part of the planning work for the conference and pulling things together. And I think that commission members have shown to be pretty flexible to meet when needed, meet more often if needed, and then back off if there's not too much that we need to talk about outside of our quarterly meetings.
So knowing that, do you have the time to serve when reappointed?
Yes, yes, I do.
And Dr. Housel, since you have some sense of how much time is involved, do you have the time to serve?
Yes, I do.
Ms. Wilson, during your tenure over the last several years, has there ever been a conflict of interest that's come up?
Not that I know of where anyone's had to recuse themselves. There have been moments where there has been discussion of pending legislation and how it could affect the work of the commission or DC Health and folks who are working on coalitions or campaigns toward that legislation, but none of it has presented an actual conflict for which someone has to recuse. But there's usually disclosure among the members.
And so that's what you would do if an instance came up.
Yes.
But you don't foresee any conflict of interest with you. And I don't consider if you're working on a campaign on some issue and that matter comes before the commission, I don't know how that would be a conflict of interest within the meaning of the law unless you're getting paid on the campaign.
Correct.
So, but you don't foresee any conflict of interest.
No.
And Dr. Housel, do you foresee any conflict of interest?
I do not at this time.
And if there were to be one, what would you do?
I'll definitely take that serious. I think if there were to be one that was real or either perceived, I would definitely disclose it immediately and recuse myself from any and all discussions, votes, all that good stuff.
Thank you. My next question is my pre-hearing questions. I'd asked this. Ms. Wilson, are you current in your taxes and obligations to the district and federal governments?
Yes, yes, I am.
Dr. Housel?
Yes, I am.
So the only other thing is, as I asked at the beginning, if you would provide me with copies of your statements. Councilmember Gray, do you have any questions?
I have some questions for Dr. Housel. And she's already talked about her professional background, which is quite impressive. And I appreciate her willingness to serve as well. So, Dr. Housel, could you speak a little bit about the goals as you adopt your engagement with the commission? What are some of the goals that you have working with the commission, Dr. Housel?
Yeah, thank you. And again, thank you so much, Councilmember Gray. The hearing from Ms. Wilson, I think, was incredibly helpful and really to helping me to get a good sense of where I might be able to help out and actually what I see as some of the potential goals. I think the first step would be just making sure that everyone has a solid understanding of why we're on the commission and what the commission was commissioned to do. And, you know, really teasing out those roles and responsibilities. And then also another goal would be to look more broadly at how we are defining or viewing health equity. Because as you all know, there are many different social determinants of health that span outside of the healthcare space, from education to socioeconomics. So I think really making sure that we make, that the commission is able to make those sorts of connections and that the work that we do is not done in a silo.
Thank you. You heard Ms. Wilson testify about the possibility of a conference being conducted by the commission itself. What are the goals that you would envision pursuing with such a conference, Dr. Housel?
Yes, so I think, you know, right now, I think really just educating, I'm hoping that the conference would aim to really educate and raise awareness around health equity issues in the district. I'm also hoping that the conference would, as I mentioned earlier, bring in other district agencies and partners. So really building up a collaboration of entities that can take a fresh look at health inequities, and to also, come up with some real innovative solutions. I know I love conferences. They're always great to get people in the room, but you always, but it's something to be said about walking away with some action items and some concrete steps that people can take to start moving the needle forward.
Absolutely. One of the things that we grapple with, and because you live in Ward 7, but we grapple with the issues of food deserts, and we're working on that. And I really would like to know how you could use this opportunity to further elucidate those issues and further engage the city in addressing those kinds of issues.
Yeah, so I think the first step is for me, and maybe this is just my background, but making sure that we have adequate data at our disposal to make really informed decisions. And so, while there are food deserts in, Ward 7 and 8 and other areas, I think that there is an opportunity to really begin to collaborate more broadly across the city to see how we can fulfill those gaps. Unfortunately, it takes a while for a certain infrastructure to be developed. But in the interim, there's lots of things that I believe we could do. But again, it starts with really collecting the data to determine, hey, where we kind of know where the food deserts are, but do we also know where there are resources that are available to help address some of those issues and that we could point community residents to. So those are just some of the things that I think would be important for the commission to look at.
Okay. And as you know, we are working on developing more grocery stores in Ward 7 in particular, and also on the East End in Ward 8. Is there something that you think you can help with that as a member of the commission?
Yeah, that's another great question. I think, again, just raising the visibility around what health equity means, not just for a particular group of people that live in a particular area, but how it impacts us as a whole. And I think, just garnering more support across the entire city around why, eliminating food deserts or providing this critical infrastructure is important, I think would be helpful. I know that the council has done a lot of great work and put forward a lot of great bills, but we also need funding to help move some of those issues forward, and we need support not only from the people, but also exploring various public-private partnerships and other innovative funding strategies to make sure that we're able to get those resources off the ground.
Well, let me just say thank you again for your willingness to serve. I'm delighted that you're willing to do it, and I have every reason to think that this is going to be a very successful experience for you and for us.
Awesome. Thank you.
Dr. Houseo, I forgot to ask this one question. So we initially, when I spoke with you and the resolution is introduced, would appoint you as the non-voting community advisory member from Ward 7. But it's my intention to convert that to a voting member. And I'm assuming that you don't have an issue with that.
No, I don't. In fact, I'd be honored to serve as a voting member.
I think it gives you a little bit more role as well. And then we have another nominee who's not subject today, who would be the non-voting member from Ward 7. I believe that Dr. Christopher King just got on. Before I excuse the two of you, why don't we hear from Dr. King? I know you just got on, but if you have a statement, please.
Hello, everyone. It's good to see you. My name is Dr. Christopher King, and I apologize I haven't been able to benefit from prior presentations, but I am an associate professor at Georgetown University, and my background is in health disparities, health equity, systemic racism, and how that impacts health and health outcomes. This would be my second term on the commission. It's been a pleasure to serve and contribute to the vision that we have for all residents to live healthy and meaningful lives. And so I don't know if there's additional information that I need to share with you, but I'm happy to do so.
So you don't have more of a statement than that?
I was not given instruction on what needed to be
Yeah,
presented.
our bad. We did send you some questions though beforehand, and I don't think we have the answers yet.
Okay.
Did you get those questions?
I don't recall, but I am so sorry. Let me make sure. Let me confirm. Confirm here.
We probably sent, it was a letter from me to you that was probably sent that I would have sent a week or so ago.
It came from Mendelson. Let's see.
Probably from Blaine Stum.
Okay, yes.
Christian Washington, I'm sorry, from Christian Washington. Well, why don't we do this? I'll ask that Mr. Washington on my staff, we send the questions to you. I won't be able to move forward with your reappointment until we get the answers.
Okay, I have the document. Okay. I don't know how I missed this. Does this need to be presented in writing or should?
Yes.
Oh, okay, okay. I apologize. I was not aware. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. But as I said, we will need the answers. So if you could get those to us. I will
Absolutely.
these questions. So you've served on the commission. You have a sense of how much time is required. Do you have the time to give when you're reappointed?
Absolutely.
And you've been on the commission, so you have some sense of the issues. Do you foresee any conflicts of interest? And if an issue of if a matter that is a conflict of interest came up, what would you do?
If there was a matter of conflict, I would raise the issue. If it was appropriate, I would recuse myself. I don't anticipate any conflict. Again, I've served for 3 years now, and that has not been an issue.
My next question is, are you current in your taxes and obligations to the district government and the federal government?
Absolutely.
Since you didn't have a statement, let me ask you this. What challenges do you see for the commission? And what goals do you hope to accomplish?
Well, you know, the city's changing. The city's changing, it's changing rapidly. And, you know, the question is, how can we be sure that all people, especially those who've been here for generations, how can they benefit from how the city is evolving and how prosperous, you know, we're doing? I think that the challenge for us will be, you know, how do we address, you know, how the city is changing and just making sure that everybody can benefit from the progress. We clearly have significant disparities in the city based on where we live in the city, and those have a history, and that story needs to be told. That's work that I've been deeply involved in lately to help us answer those questions, right? What can we do to fix the harm that's been done to residents due to systemic forms of racism? You know, what will that look like? And so that's the work that challenges me and motivates me and inspires me, because I do think that we can serve as a model for the nation, so that all people can live healthy and meaningful lives.
Let me see. I'm going to turn to Councilmember Gray. Mr. Gray, do you have any questions?
No,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, so I think I'll leave it at that. Please get us those answers to those questions.
Absolutely.
And I want to thank you for your service. I want to thank two of you for your service thus far, and all three of you for your willingness to serve going forward. And with that, you're excused. Thank you very much. And I'm going to turn to the last resolution before the committee. And that is the appointment of Dr. Wanda Thompson to the Citizen Review Panel for Child Abuse and Neglect. This is PR 24-429. This would be a new appointment by the council. Dr. Thompson, do you have a statement?
Yes, I do. It's not typed, but I will type it up and make sure that you get that as well too.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman Mendelson, Councilmember Gray, and the other council members for considering my nomination for this very important panel. When I first learned about the vacancies on this panel, I felt like I could make a contribution. This is an area of great interest and commitment for me. And those who know me know that I am bivocational. I am both a pastor and I'm a clinical psychologist. I earned my doctorate in clinical psychology from Temple University and my Master of Divinity degree from Howard University School of Divinity. I began my career in psychology over 44 years ago as a master's level psychologist in community mental health in Baltimore. From there, I went to Montgomery County Department of Health, where I had a career in crisis intervention and began a long-term history in victim services, including crisis intervention, domestic violence, and sexual assault. I left there and I came to DC, where I worked for what was then called the Crisis Resolution Branch, which is now CPEP in the district. And I left there and began my 25-year career with the Child and Adolescent Protection Center at Children's Hospital. I have worked with children, families, MPD, Youth Division, Child and Family Services, and other agencies. I have worked with children on inpatient units, outpatients, and I have dealt with both physical abuse, sex abuse, and also neglect. I've worked with children who've been in foster care and their families. I have taught in parenting classes. I continue now to have a small private practice. I retired in 2011. At my private practice, I see adults and children, and it's just a small practice. I'm also a community activist who's spearheaded a community code, which I hope will help in the anti-violence efforts. And I believe it's important for communities and the agencies that serve them to be accountable for our youth. I am very interested in working in this area. I think I have a lot to contribute in terms of guidance, support, and recommendations for the child welfare system. And so again, I thank you for the opportunity to serve.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. Where is Ambassador Baptist Church?
1412 Minnesota Avenue, South, right almost at the corner of Minnesota and Good Hope Road. Across from the park. You've been there.
I have. I was at a memorial service there a couple of years
And
ago.
Christmas tree lighting and things like that.
Yes, try to do that every year.
Yes.
So I can't tell you how much time is spent with the Citizen Review Panel, but you're committed to spending the time that it would take to serve?
I am. I am a busy person, but I have always felt like when you want something done, just like it's often said, you give it to a busy person to do. I would make time for this because it really does touch on what I've spent my career doing.
Now, the commission, as I recall, makes recommendations relevant to issues involving child abuse and neglect. So I can't see that there would be a conflict of interest. Do you foresee that there would be any conflict of interest that might come up?
What I put in my comments to you all that I sent in was that the only potential conflicts that I could see, and I really don't think that they would be conflicts. My sister sits as a judge on the DC Court of Appeals. She just completed her term, but she continues to serve as an associate judge until her replacement is there. And then she will probably be a senior judge. Only in the case if something came up having to do with the child welfare system would I see a conflict of interest. And I think in that case, she would probably recuse herself, and I would too, from any involvement in that. In my private practice, working with children, I don't have any children who are in foster care right now or followed by protective services, nor in my church. Mostly my congregation is made up of seniors. And the only other thing that I can think of, which I don't think is a conflict of interest, in some of the community groups that I serve in, some of the members, staff from the collaboratives are also in those meetings. The collaboratives are part of the child welfare system. I don't see that that would necessarily be a problem because what we deal with is not the issues of those collaboratives. They're more around other community issues. But those would be the only ones. And again, if anything came up, I would recuse myself.
Thank you. And then I'd asked this in my pre-hearing questions to you. Are you current in your taxes and obligations to the district government and federal government?
I am.
Let me just see if I have any other question for you. Yeah, I do. So I believe that the council has several appointments, and I think we still are looking for one or two other appointees. And in the process of looking, I've gotten some feedback that some folks who feel that the commission could be more effective. I don't know if there's a question in there so much as I'm just putting that out there. I don't know if you want to comment on it, but of course, we're interested in having an effective, well-working, results-producing commission. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I guess my thoughts would be, and I failed to mention this in my statement, but first of all, I'm a native Washingtonian, and I grew up in Ward 7, and I have lived for 33 years in Ward 8. I think that both from the standpoint of having worked with clients before and with families in the system, I think I have a balanced view of both the families side of involvement in cases as well as the child welfare side. And I think what I can bring to it is an authenticity around what people have experienced and what recommendations might be helpful. And my involvement with the community, I think also, because it's important for communities to support these families, I think that my involvement as a community member also gives me another lens to look at where I could make recommendations as well too. So I think that I could make a contribution there. And you should have 4 letters that have been written in support of my nomination as well too. And from Joyce Thomas, who is the current facilitator of the panel, and then from Dr. Allison Jackson, who heads up Child and Adolescent Protection at Children's, as well as Dr. Beverly Jackson, who's a clinician and a researcher, and Dr. Kim Bullock, who chairs the Medical Society Task Force on Family Violence, of which I'm a member. So I think just given a lot of the expertise that I am exposed to gives me a unique position where I can call on people for advice myself. I have my own thoughts about things that need to happen, and I think that I know how to research some of the concerns that's there. And that's my response, really. I think I just bring a unique perspective.
I think that sounds good. I appreciate your willingness to serve. I do not have any other questions for you. So I'll leave it with that. You will get us a copy of your statement.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Thompson, for your willingness. And with that, you're excused.
All right. Thank you so much. All right.
The record in this matter, again, is open until 5 p.m. on November 10th. So anyone who wishes to submit statements or any additional information has, I believe that's 2 weeks to do so. That's going to conclude this hearing, which has been on nominations for appointment by the council, reappointment for the Uniform Law Commission, appointments and reappointments to the Commission on Health Equity, and an appointment to the Citizen Review Panel on Child Abuse and Neglect. The time is 4:28 in the afternoon.